Okay, so today's class we're going to continue. We're going to continue on what we did last time in JavaScript. I wanted to hit one point that I think is very important with JavaScript, and then I'm going to go back into CSS and talk about tables, which is I think chapter 6 in the book. And these are, I think, important things to know, especially when you're going at first designing a website. It's important to know how to utilize tables. A few quick announcements before class actually begins. I posted. I hope that everybody has had a chance to start going through the review for the final. I believe it's set now that you should be able to take do a question and then check it to see how your response is. It'll tell you if you got it right or not, and in addition, it will tell you the correct answer. So that's good. I've also posted a course evaluation that the school sent me that I'm supposed to tell you to make sure that you do before the final. So it should be up there on the site, and I haven't seen it myself, but you should try to do that before the final so they could all have that submitted. And was there anything else I wanted to say? I took some notes on what I wanted to tell you. The actual final itself, I'm going to post it after this session. So by the time you're watching this, it should be posted already. It'll have about 100 questions on the test itself. I believe they're all multiple choice and a couple of matchups, and I set it to have it only one. You can't. This current test, you could stop and start. I believe that I set this that you have to take it all in one shot. If that's an issue, let me know, and I could reset it for you for a specific individual. But it's supposed to be an actual final, and so just be prepared for 100 questions to go and answer. And obviously, because this is the last week of class, you should hand in any outstanding homework that you have not handed in yet, so I could grade it. If you've noticed, a couple students had noticed that I might have made a mistake in grading, let me know. I like to see when I've made a mistake, especially when I give you a lower grade and you deserve a higher grade. I'll go through it and I'll take a look. So if there's any issues, please let me know. If I don't answer the first email, I might have missed the email. I try to answer very fast, but if not, email again. You're not bothering me. It just means I'm busy or I'm not at my computer, and I'll answer as soon as I can. Today's class, like I said, we're going to continue on a little bit more in JavaScript, and then we're going to talk about tables. So without further ado, let me bring in the text editor, and I'm going to try today also. Some students requested that I post my source code, which makes sense because we spend a lot of time doing actual code on the screen, and then you have to retype it, which is great practice. But it might be easier if you actually have the code. So what I'll try to do, if I remember, is as I do code, I will copy and paste. You can even remind me if necessary. I'll copy and paste the code to another file. And then at the very end, I'll just upload that entire file, and it'll be up to you to kind of pick and choose which of the code that you want to go and get. But remember, the code that I do in the screen is more, it's correct code, obviously, if it runs, but it's not necessarily the cleanest code, meaning I wouldn't, like, if I'm going for a interview, I might not submit this code as my ideal code. So take that into consideration as well. All right, so where did I leave off? I left off, right, okay, last time we were dealing with the randomizer program, which is kind of fun now that you know how to randomize. I'm sure that a lot of you have already handed in an assignment, some great homework that was handed in as far as the math problems and submitting it to get the different how many questions are correct or not correct, and we couldn't have done that without the randomizer. So I'm going to show you a way to, well, let me put the code in actually myself. Okay, here, let me just copy the head in here, and we'll take it from there. 1 second. All right, so, all right, and I'm going to save this as, give me a second here, save as, I'm going to save it to, where is this, chapter 7, that's fine, I guess, and I'll save it as t2.html, and let me close the body here, and let me close, and what else, I have to close the HTML. And let me see what I might do. I just copied this from another window. This is not even important. All right, and I'll do this as T2 also. I haven't done it yet. Fine, and adjust JavaScript will be T2. All right. Okay, now let me get to the body here. All right, my goal here is I want to show you how to, up until now, when you clicked on a button, pretty much you're able to affect one ID of code. I want to show you how to affect an entire set of classes in one click of a button. And in order to do this, the code I'll show you in a minute in JavaScript, it's something called a for loop. And I'm not going to get it, I know in your next class you're going to be taking will be a programming class. A lot of this will be a lot more clear once you take a programming class. But I think it's important enough to show you that the possibility is here in order to do it. And you just have to, and once you take the programming class, you'll see a lot of variations of this for loop. But let me just, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let me make a button. I'm going to call it ID will be equal to setNums. And let me close this up. And I'm going to call set the numbers, and I'm going to close this button. Okay. So that's going to be an actual button. And now my goal here is pretty much to have a bunch of fields, and as soon as I click on this button, set the numbers, every single field will be set with a random number. Every single field will be set with a random number. Up until now, you would have had to make a bunch of different inside of JavaScript. You would have had to make a lot of different lines of code in order to accomplish a task that we'll see will make just in a matter of minutes. All right, I'm making my div here, and I'm going to have a class. I don't really need the container, but I'm just used to doing it. Container. Basically, a container is just where your code's going to go. It's good program practice to put all your code inside of a container. I probably actually made this because I wanted to demonstrate some container information, but container, and we close my div. Always close your divs. And now let me make some more. I'm going to make a div class is equal to, I will call it, I don't know, a number. And I'm not going to put anything in here right now. And I'll just copy this a bunch of times. Copy as many times as I want. In fact, you could even use JavaScript. We'll see later on, you could use JavaScript to add more of divs if you wanted to, or you could take them away. There's really a lot of power you could do with it. All right, so I have everything here is good. I'm closing this, closing the body. Yeah, everything's good. Okay, fine. And this is saved. Let me run it. I'm not sure what window it's going to show up in, so give me a second. I'll run it in, I guess, Firefox. And you don't see this, but I do. Let me bring it into you, another view. Give me a moment here, please. And, oh, wrong window. Second, sorry. Okay. All right, and here is what I just did, right? So right now it doesn't do anything, right? Just you click on all you want, it's not gonna do anything because we didn't set up the JavaScript yet. So let's set up the JavaScript. So the JavaScript, I want to do the following. Make a new, I'm just gonna save this now. I'll do save as, what I call it, I call the T2, right? T2.js. And I'm gonna do this all on, remember, because I want to make it so something happens on the click, and I didn't put the command inside of the HTML, so I'm gonna do a window.onload equals function, open and close this, and I'm going to put this all in some code here. Okay. And let me just make sure this is working. I'm doing alert hello. just to make sure that everything is hooked up correctly before I move on even. Run it. Hello, good, okay, fine. So we see, because it loaded, so once it loaded, it knows that it's, so I know that everything is working out well. I mean, it's all, my onload is working. All right, so now I want to do my document dot get element by ID. Get element by ID. And what I want to get by ID, I want to do the set nums. Set nums, that's what I called it, right? Let me just make sure. Set nums, good, set nums. Sometimes I just copy and paste it to make sure I didn't make a typo. Set nums. Dot add event, remember, add event listener. And here I want to, I'm actually going to make this window a little bit smaller because we had some problems last time with some of the recording being chopped off. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. Okay, add event listener. I'm going to do a click. Click. So when they click it, what's going to happen? I'm going to be running a function. Function. I'm going to do an open and closed parenthesis for my function. And now I'm going to open up another curly brace, and this whole whatever's inside of this function here is going to happen for my, when I click on a button. And again, I want to test to make sure it's all working. Alert hello again, or hi. Now in order to end this, I have to do the following. I'm going to do a close my curly brace, and I have to close my parenthesis, I think, and I have to close this. So let's make sure this is working. I just saved it. Going back to my document here, running it, clicking this, and I made a mistake somewhere. Let's see here, function, that's working. Add event click, function. All right, I just took out I took out one of the curly braces. Try one more time. There, okay. Again, you saw that I like always test it out before you build onto it, because then you know where your problem is as you're building it. Okay, so now that I have done, that, I want to do the following. My goal here, is to get all of these HTMLs, all these in the HTML. I want to put a random number here. I'll put them in all the spots in one click of a button. Now I realize that we could have changed. I could have made this an ID and called this num1, ID num2, ID num3, ID num4. You could for sure do that, but it's you don't know. Let's say you don't know how many ahead of time you want, or let's say that you're going to get rid of some of them and have them come back. So there's must be a cleaner way to accomplish the same task, and there is. And I also chose to choose a class here as opposed to an ID, because a class you usually should not have the same ID in more than one location on the same page, and that's because an ID is exactly that. It's an identification. And usually identification is only one of them, as opposed to a class. In a class, you could have multiple classes. And it makes sense to have multiple classes because classes pretty much define how something's going to look, or in this case, how something's going to react when we go and we click the button. So in order to accomplish this, I want to do the following. First, let me make the function. We did last time the function get random int. This is something that we made up. Random int, and this random int is taking in a number, or max, maybe we'll call it max, and the max number is going to return return. What's it going to return? It's going to return from the math library the floor. It's going to put it down to the round down. What's it going to do with down? It's going to do a math.random, which is going to return a random real number, like with a decimal point, times math.floor max. This is the number that we're going to be passing in, and I'm going to close my parenthesis there, and I want to I think that's it. Yeah, I'm going to put a semicolon here, and let's just make sure that this is working. I'm going to do another alert. I'm going to call my function, and I'm going to call it with number 10. So I should get a number from 0 to 9. Run it. And there's 1. What are the chances of that? 4. Okay, fine. So we see that that is working. Great. So here is the new piece of code. This is all from last week. This is nothing new. Here's the code that I'm going to show you. First, this is a new we actually talked about this concept before, but I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to call it all nums. I'll explain what this is in a moment. I'm going to do document dot query select all, selector all, and what I want to select all, I want to select all a number. All right, so what this statement is doing here is I'm creating a new variable. I think I could have done VAR instead of a constant. Just means that it can't be changed. I could have done VAR, but I'm throwing constant, which means it can't be changed, which is fine because I don't want it to change. And all nums is a new variable type. What is this variable type holding? This variable type is holding all of the classes anum. So it's going to contain all of these. Now, it's a little bit vague what exactly that means. Like, you can't really do anything with it by itself, but it does have all of the numbers. In fact, I've never done this. I'm just curious what will happen if I do an alert all nums. It's probably just going to return an object. Let's just take a look and see what happens. I'll run this. Yeah, so it's returning what's called an object. So, which is fine. I mean, that doesn't mean anything for us right now, but this variable that is created contains all of these numbers, and I'll prove it to you. I'm going to do an alert, right? I'm going to do an alert all nums dot length. Now, length is I think we've had length before when it dealt with the size of a character. Length is how many all nums are there. And let's take a look. Let's see if we're right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 of them. There's 6 A numbers. 6 A numbers. I'm going to go here. I'm going to refresh my page. I'm going to run it, and it says 6. That's cool, because now we know this variable contains it's an object. It contains all of those classes. And obviously, if I would put more in here, if I would double this up, obviously, right, and put more in, right, and I run the program again, right, and I'm gonna run it again, it's gonna be a higher number because I just put more in. So you could see the power now that what we're gonna start to do, because now that we have control of, we know how many there are, and we have a variable that contains all of them, I could use this. I'm going to use it in what's called a for loop. Now, I will explain, or whoever is teaching you programming in your next course will explain more about what's called a for loop. There are 3 main loops in all programming languages. There's a for loop, there's a while loop, and there's a do loop. So we're just going to focus for a minute and for each, but that's also a for. And so I'm going to do for. I'll explain this in a minute what I'm doing. For variable I equaling 0, as long as I is less than, we have all nums dot length, right? I'm going to do all nums dot length, yeah. I plus plus. What I want to do? Well, what I want to do is I want to take my all nums, and I'll explain this again in a minute. All nums, and this actually borders, what I'm showing you right now borders on what chapter 10 borders on chapter 10, if we would have done chapter 10, what the concept of chapter 10. It's called an array, and I'll explain it again in a minute. Inner HTML is equal to, get random int, and I'm going to do 100 here. And if I did everything correctly, I'm going to run this. I saved it. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to run it. I do set random numbers, and we see there are a bunch of random numbers in one clean. This for loop is like amazing. What the for loop did was and I'll go into more detail in a moment, but it went through each of these and put a number here, put a number here, put a number here, and all the way down for each of them. So, and you're not limited to just putting in numbers. We'll see, we're going to talk about tables in a minute after we finish this example, that we're able to, you could also set like the background color, or you can set, and I'm going to actually have, when we talk about tables, I'm going to have you do that as a small assignment. You're able to do anything you want with each element, as long as it has the class a number. It will go and it will react with that specific part of code. All right, so let me explain this for loop. Okay, so we have the word for, and again, this is a very, I could talk about for loops for, for an hour. I'm not going to do that now because right now it's not the coding class so much, just learning a small way of accomplishing, changing everything in one shot. So we have a for, the word for, which is a reserved word, you see, because it's yellow, variable I equaling 0. So we're creating a new variable, and that variable, we're calling it I. As long as I is less than something. Well, in this case, we want it to be less than all the numbers dot length. So remember, all nums we got a moment ago. So this variable contains all the objects of, it contains all of these. And as long as it's less than the length, so it knows how many there are, there, it has that number. It's going to do it, and then we have I++, so it's going to do something that many times. It's going to do something that many times because we know the length. It's starting off at 0, and as long as it's less than that, the length, it's going to do it again and again and again, because each time it does it, it's going to increase I by 1. So it's going to, first time down, what's it going to do? It's going to set all nums, and this is the first all num here, or I call it nums. This is the first A number. I should be calling it A number. This is the first A number, right? And because that's the first A number, it's going to set all nums sub I. The way that you read this is called sub I. This is called an array. Again, we'll talk about more than in programming, but so all nums sub I, so all nums sub 0. So the first time it's dealing with the 0th one. The 0th one is the first one. And with these type of elements, you start with 0 and you go up from there. It starts with 0, not 1. So this is the first one. The first one is called sub 0. This is sub 1. This is sub 2. So it's going to go through each of these elements. And so the first time down, it's going to I is equal to 0. So all nums sub I. So sub 0, that's the first one. What's it going to do to it? It's going to set its inner HTML equal to random number. I is going to increase to 1. So now, if first of all, is 1 less than all nums dot length? It is, because it's less than whatever number, 12 or whatever, however there are. But now our I is now equal to 1. So all nums sub 1. Well, which is all nums sub 1? It's going to be this one over here. And it's going to go through each of these, and once it goes through them, what's it going to do to each one? It's going to go and set it equal to a random number, and that's it. I mean, that's what that's a quick way of going and changing all of the numbers for that specific class. So what I want you to do now is you could copy my code. I want you to in addition to, right now the program does the following. Right now the program, hold on, make sure I have it here. Right now the program, when I run it, it's setting the numbers. Okay, I want you to make another button at the bottom here, make another button called clear. And once you press clear, it empties them. Right now it's it's putting in a random number. I don't want zeros there. I want you to make it nothing there. So that's what I want you to do. I'll give you a few minutes to go and do it. So in order to, I'm sure everybody got it. Again, I'll do my best to post this code so you'll have it in the future. I want to, in order to, I first need my HTML side, I'm going to need another button here, right? So I'll just copy this button and I'll call it clear, I guess. Clear. And I'll say, I should have called it reset. That's okay. Clear. Make sure that it's showing up correctly. Hold on, let me go here, run it. Yeah, so now that works, but of course nothing's going to happen yet because nothing is able to happen yet. So what I'll do is A second here. All right. So inside of my JavaScript, it's where am I? It's extremely similar to the other code that we have before, but instead of putting a number there, I want to put I want to set it equal to nothing. So I'm going to basically pretty much just copy this entire code over there. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to call it clear because that's what I named it. Clear. And when they click on it, again, I need this constant. And again, a constant means it can't be changed. I could just as easily made it a variable. But all right, so I'm going to take all of the get all of the class A number. I'm going to do my whole for loop again, but this time instead of setting it equal to a number itself, I want to set it equal to a nothing. Save it. Back here, run it, and there's that, and clearing it will get rid of everything. So it's a very powerful feature, very powerful, because now you're pretty much able to go through an entire document, and as long as you're also able to have more than one class name. I mean, you could, if you wanted to in your HTML, you could have multiple class names. You could have something called enum, and you could call it blue if you want. I think we've talked about that. So I can make this one have a blue background as well as be a part of the class A number. So you're with those features, you have a lot of power at your disposal. Okay, that's as far as this course is. I'm going to touch upon JavaScript a little bit more when we talk about tables. I'm going to ask you to do an example, but that's pretty much the end of what we're going to cover inside of JavaScript. There is lots more JavaScript. We just don't have the time to cover everything, but I believe that you have the skills to continue onward. But if you're going to continue on with JavaScript, what I would suggest doing is learning something called jQuery. jQuery is like an extension of JavaScript. It's like JavaScript, like super. You could do a lot of built-in things in a jQuery that's native to jQuery, which jQuery is made from JavaScript, but some very smart programmers have added and took out a lot of the hard work that you would have to do and made it a lot easier and a lot more uniform between different browsers. I'm not going to talk much about the jQuery, but like an example might be when I was showing you this for loop, you would not accomplish the same goal using jQuery. You would use something called an each command. It's pretty much the way it would be. Look something like this. It would be like a $, which means jQuery.each. And then you would put in the class name. So for each of these classes, you would go and you would execute. You would set the random number, or you would set it to clear. Basically, it's a faster and cleaner way of writing JavaScript is to use something called jQuery. And again, I'll probably go into it in the more advanced, or whoever teaches you the more advanced courses. But it's worthwhile to know that if you're going to go on your own, if you're inspired to go and to learn more JavaScript, I would say you already kind of got your hands dirty with JavaScript. You know the main elements of it. Jump into jQuery, because jQuery, pretty much if you go out and code in the real world, it's important to know JavaScript because it's important to know the general concepts, but most sites are going to be using jQuery because jQuery it's more powerful, and it's made with JavaScript, so it's important to know JavaScript, but it has a lot more power behind it. All right, good. Now, okay, so now we're jumping back to this chapter 6, which is dealing with tables and columns. Tables and columns are a bit of a controversy when it comes to HTML5 and CSS. The reason why is because you could kind of accomplish the same goal as a table as you can with using CSS. So I'm going to talk about tables because tables, I believe, are an easier way to accomplish making a table. And a table is just like you would imagine it. A table is basically a rows and columns, and you're able to put your data in a nice, neat format. And with CSS, you're able to set the table width, and you're able to set the column, how high the columns, how high each row is, and You can make the backgrounds, you make different borders, as we'll see in this section. So it's a nice way of making your HTML page look good and organized. So really fast, objectives is to explore the structure of a web page, explore the table headings and data cells, apply CSS styles, use something called span multiple rows. We're going to talk. Talk about captions, create rows and columns into groups, apply styles to them, and displays page elements in a table of form, and create multi-column layout. All right, so basically this is a table. It's rows and columns, right? Rows and columns. Rows go across, columns go up and down. In this case, they have it formatted nice and pretty. They have a purple background. Notice here on top they have its color's pink, and this is going to be a header. They have the days, the days of the week, and they have the specific time. Notice how you would think that if you have the top row, let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 different cells inside of the first row. The next row here doesn't have 8, right? It has 1 and then a real long one here, right? So how do they go accomplish that? So we'll see how the coding works with all this in a few minutes. So this is an introduction to web tables. A web table is an HTML structure that consists of multiple table rows. Each table row contains 1 or more table cells. Effective tools for organizing, classifying web page content. You use it all the time. A lot of times a page would have a table, but if it doesn't have a border, you won't even realize that it has a table. I mean, you're kind of, up until now, we've been dealing with columns, I believe. We're able to make columns. Columns are similar to tables, but tables give us the ability to make another row in an easier way. And all these consist of a table element. So a table element contains a collection of table rows marked as TR, table row element, and a table contains cells within each row. Let me just do a quick example. Instead of explaining all this, I'll do a quick example which will make it a little bit more clear. Let me open up. I'm going to just use these pages I used before. And where am I here? HTML. And I start off with the document type. I don't even need this viewport here. This is for another example. I'll keep my CSS. I don't even need my JavaScript right now, but I'll keep it anyway. And give me a second here. I'm just going to change my code here. Okay, I don't need a button right now. I don't need a container. I didn't even use the container last time in class. I don't need any of this. There we go. I've been getting rid of everything. All right. So fine. So saving it. So a table starts off with the word table. Table. Notice how once I put the word table in, it turned green because it's a reserved word. I'm going to put the word closing it. So once I have a table, I'm going to put a closed table in, and that's the start of my table. Each row in a table consists of a command called TR. I guess it stands for T for table, R for row. So I'm going to have a TR there, and in essence, I've made 1 row so far in my table. All right. If I want to make, if I would show you this right now, let me demonstrate what this looks like right now on my page. You'll see that it's going to look like nothing actually, but I'll show you anyway. Hold on. Where am I here? Right. I'm going to refresh this, and nothing's there because it doesn't really have anything. So if I now want a column here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a TD. I don't know why it's TD is a cell. It's one. In essence, it's a column. I'm not sure what the D stands for. Maybe data. Could be data. I'm going to make this A. And now that I have all this, I can go much faster. I'm going to do A, B, C, B here, and C here. Great. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run it over here. And we see an ABC. Great. I'm going to copy this and put it over here. So I have another row in essence. And I'm going to make ABC D okay? And we see now the second row is DCF, and I'm going to make this prettier in a moment too. I mean, I realize that I'm just going to make a bunch of them here. DCF, GHI, GHI. Okay, and then if I wanted to demonstrate here, you'll see that it's, nice and good. Now I'm going to give just to show you, but you could start giving it some information. I'm going to make an ID for this one. I'm going to call it my table. My table. This is for CSS purposes. So I now want to go and make my CSS for my table. I'm saving this here, and we go into my CSS. Is this my CSS? Where is it? No, it's over there. Do I have CSS at all? I mean, I guess not. I'll make it new. I'll hold on a second. I'll make a file new. I'm going to save this as t2.css. And I'll make sure that I'm calling it correctly here. Let me just take this and bring it over here. And hold on, okay, oh yeah. So let me put some CSS in. I'm going to make my table. Oh, the truth is I don't even need if you don't name it, I'll show you in a minute. If you don't name it, I go back here. Let me take out this name that I put for it. I'm gonna take out my table. If you don't specify a table, it's just gonna do all tables, and that's okay in this case. If I want to specify a specific one, I can specify it. I'm gonna make my border. We'll talk about each of these in a minute. I'm just kind of showing you what the book's gonna be showing us, but just showing you so it's easier to do. Border collapse. Is equal to separate, and so that's for my table, and my TD. This is just to show you that we have control over each one. I'm going to set my border equal to, make it 1 pixel, and make it 1 pixel solid blue. Border 1 pixel solid blue, good, and we'll make the width equal to, I don't know, like a 50, I guess, 50 pixels, and we'll do text align center. Yeah, you could do each individual one if you want to, yes. Center. All right, if I didn't make any typos, do this, run it, and we'll see it's nice and neat. See how nice and clean that is? Very simple to do, yet you could have control over each of these elements if you wanted to. It's everything is nice and aligned, and we could make a solid border around all of them. We could shade each individual one. We have all the control. If I would have, right, I could have gone just as easily inside of a specific one over here. I'm getting a little tab. This one keeps popping up here. I could have named a specific one. I don't know. I could name this, I don't know, red if I wanted to, right? And then I could, inside of my CSS, I could set my, class equals red. And then I could set my if I would do this, inside of my CSS, I could go and set like background equals red, and that will change the background of that specific one. So we have control over each one, each element if we wanted to, or the whole entire table. So this is just a very quick overview of tables. I kind of wanted to show you what it's going to look like, and now let's do it formally inside of the slides. All right. So, second here. Right. So this is the general structure of a web table. We have the word table followed by the TRs, and then we have the table cells inside. And the table cells we know are going to be the TDs. So TR separates each row, and then inside of each row we have a specific cell. So here, this is their setting. In this case, they're setting a specific class. I could have done that just as easily. I could set a class. They're setting it equal to schedule to make it match the example that we had before, that we saw earlier. and and if you wanted, well, we'll see how to do that in a second as we go through it. Right, web tables support two types of cells. There's header cells, and that contains content placed at the top of the column or beginning of the row. By default, displays the text in bold and centers the text horizontally. It's marked with a TH. So I didn't put a header in mine. I could have just as easily put a header in mine, but the header cell is in this example here shows up at the very top. By default, it's in the top. By default, you don't have to do the CSS for it. It's automatically bolded and it's automatically centered. Here's the example for that. They have their example over here, right? You actually put in the TR, you're going to do a TH. Instead of doing a TD, you're going to do a TH for table header. And here they have time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for each one. And then that will go and put in a header for each one. I could put a header in if I wanted to, I guess. I could go over here and instead of doing I could follow their lead. I could do another TR, and close it. TR, and it's TH. 1 second, TH, and I'm going to close it. And I'll just put, I don't know, put 1, 2, 3 here. I'll put 1, and I'll just copy it so it goes a lot faster. Right, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And let's take a look and see how that looks. Now these are my headers, and we see that it's showing up 1, 2, 3. It doesn't have the same. It's not going to have the same border because I didn't set it equal to my. It was only TRs I put in. It didn't. They're not going to cover the. It's not going to. The same border is not going to apply. I would have to apply more CSS in order to make it look the same. But we see that this is what a header goes and looks like. All right, so then after that, and you can see this example, they're putting in the TDs for each individual cells for the row, right? Marking table heading and table data. You said data is correct, table data. So each one of these stands for each individual cell within this specific row. So you would go and you put it in, and obviously they have to line up. We'll see how to make them not line up in a bit. But right now, obviously this column here has to match up with this column here. So however many columns you have, each piece of data, you have to have that many beneath it as well. The same way in our example, we have 1, 2, 3 here. There's 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns. The CSS border property is used to add borders to any part of the web table. Borders need not be of the same style. There are two types, two style choices for borders. We have separate and collapsed borders. So that's where you saw before, and these are examples of how they would look, right? Here we have, these are separate borders. And this is how they look like that, as opposed to collapsed borders, and it's gonna look like that. So separate borders are each individual ones, like a phone, I guess, as opposed to the typical tic-tac-toe board. So those are the two different types that we have to choose, and this is the text word to choose between the separate or collapsed border model. Apply the following properties to the table element. We have border collapse, and then you have the specific type, where the type could either be separate or collapse. Right, the separate borders model sets the spacing between the borders using the border spacing, so you could actually set a specific spacing if you wanted to, where the value is going to be some type of CSS unit, pixels, or whatever you're going to be dealing with. The collapsed border model, borders from adjacent elements are merged together to form a single border. Borders are joined to combine their features. Combining adjacent borders with different styles or colors is kind of complicated. Borders can get, depending on what you want to do with your CSS and your tables, it could get quite complicated. I'll show you a little bit of an easier way to accomplish that later on. But they could get, I mean, depending on what you're doing, like if you want to make tables which have like every other row being a shaded row, or specific ones, it does get a little complicated, and you could use JavaScript to help you out if necessary. Right, so here, I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is the code for accomplishing this table, and this is the code for accomplishing that one, similar to the example that we just did. Let me, okay, I have an example here that I want to show you. Let me demonstrate something for you. Give me a second here. I figured that before I said that we're done with JavaScript, but I wanted to the same trick that we applied to in JavaScript in order to get all in the previous part of the class, earlier part of the class, we're able to get elements to like a random number or any number inside of for a row. We can do the same thing utilizing JavaScript for tables. So let me, depending if I should give you time on your, I'll just show you. I'll show you what I'm referring to. Let me get my code out here. I guess I've already stick with this. I'm gonna take out my header because the example I prepped beforehand did not have a header in it. Let's do the following. Give me a moment here. Let me do the following. I'm gonna put in, I'm gonna set this TD equal to, I'm gonna set a class equals to, I'll call it my cell. And I could actually do a few of them. I'll do my cell here, and I'm gonna do my cell here, and I'll do my cell over here. Okay, so this one, and this one. So basically the first column, if you have to think of this in terms of columns, right? I'm gonna set it all, in fact, I'll do the following. I will, inside of my, just for fun here, I'm gonna do this. I'll do my cell, I'll do dot my cell, and I'll do background color, I think. Background color, is it? Background, make it red. Let's see if this works. Right, so because these are set to my cell, I was demonstrated to show you that I could make them red. But that's actually not my whole example. I just wanted to demonstrate that it is possible to go into to do that. What I want to show you is the following. I want to go back to my JavaScript over here. This is my JavaScript from the other program. I'm not going to type everything out just in order to save some time. I'm going to steal it from my screen that I have off of the window. I'm going to change this constant instead of being we're going to do it my cell, which is the cell that I'm going and dealing with. And let me also do this. Let me make a button inside of my HTML, and I'm going to call it, I'll call it clear. Hold on. And again, to save some time, I'm just going to copy from the other screen. Clear all. I'll just say clear for right now. Clear. And let me make sure that's showing up okay in my actual text. Okay, good. I have my clear button there. It's not going to do anything yet, obviously. All right. And basically, I want to clear one column. Everywhere where it says my cell, I want to go and clear those specific cells. So I'm going to, I don't need this either. I don't need this function to get rid of that. I could put random numbers. We already did that example. All right, so okay, so for all, I have my constant for, I'm going to call it cells. I'll call it all cells instead of numbers. So you already know that all cells is now going to contain all of my cells. In this case, it's only 3 of the 9, but it's still 3 of the 9, right? And what I want to do with it, well, I'm going to say for I equaling 0, as long as I is less than all cells.length, as long as it's less than all the cells.length, what I want to go and do, well, I want to actually make that specific element nothing in it. I want to make it equal to, instead of that, I'll make it equal to a dash, let's say. So I'll say this, I'll say all cells sub I dot, and this is where inner text, right? INNER, inner text. Why isn't it showing up? Hold on. Oh, and I meant, I think it's inner text. I'm not sure why, if I spelled it wrong. Inner text is equal to, let's make sure this works. And that's it. All right, I'm gonna do this, save it. Go over here, run it. It's still red, I don't want it to be red anymore. Hold on. One moment, sorry. Save. Run, clear. What did I do wrong? Hold on. So I accidentally went and I had this wrong name. That's what I get for copying and pasting. I should have just done it from scratch. So what I managed to do here, let me get rid of this alert. What I managed to do is when you click the button, when you click the clear all button, the clear, it's gonna look for all of the cells that contain the class called myCell. With that, myCell, it will go and what's it going to do with it? It's going to look at each one, or it's going to be 3 of them. It's going to go through each one in order, and it's going to set the inner text, meaning the inner text, the text that's inside of the cell, it's going to set it equal to a hyphen. I could have just as easily set it to a space. The reason why I didn't want to set it to the space is because one of my examples I had later on, which I probably won't give you because I don't think we're going to have enough time, is if we clear all of them, then actually because we've learned that the computer automatically goes and when spaces aren't there, the table basically will collapse on itself. It's not collapsing now because there still is a space, some type of character inside one of the cells. So that's why it's not collapsing about now. But if I got rid of all of them, then you'd see that the whole table will collapse. It's possible to get to stop it by putting in a pretend space, a character code, or by going and using some more CSS, but I didn't want to go into that. So I just thought it'd be easier by going and doing this. What I want you to do is I'll give you the code. I don't need to spend time typing out the code. So I'm going to share this code with everybody right now, just so you have it to save time. I'm going to share the code with you. This is the code for the JavaScript, and this will be the code for the HTML. And okay, hopefully you got that, I hope. And what I want you to do is to follow there. Like, if you wanted to change the these cells, the ones that have myCell, if you wanted to change it to, let's say, the color blue. I did red before, but you can make it blue or red. You can make any color you want. You would use the following. You would use a command that has it's .style background color. .style. I'll put this down here also. I'll put it over here. Right. There's something called. I'm just gonna show you what it is. Right. .style background color. And this style can be applied to any of the objects of all cell. Now I realize we did not do. What I'm telling you now is, it's pretty much like a 1 or 2 liner to add to your code, but I'm being a little bit vague on how to do it. All cells contain all of the cells that contain the myCell class. I want you to use this all style background color, and it's going to be like an equal, I don't know, red, blue, gray, whatever you want, any built-in color. I want you to apply that to all of those cells. So in addition to using just a hyphen, I want you to change the background color using something, by changing the style, because you could change the style, CSS, which is style, on anything by using this style command. So that's what I want you to do. I'll give you about 2 minutes to do it, and then I'll show you how to accomplish it. So we already have this all cells, and this all cells contains all the cells called with the class my cells. So I'm going to just use this again. I'm just going to steal this code over here, this all cells. And what I want to do, I want to change the style for each one of them. Change the style for each one. I'm going to set the background color to blue. So I'll explain this again one more time after I do it. Right, we have, I'm going to run it. I'm going to do clear. And now there goes specifically blue. Remember, with CSS, you're pretty much able to change anything that you could change with a style. You could also change through JavaScript. I could also go and change, let me just change the actual color, the text color. I'm going to copy this just because I could. It'd be easier. And I'm going to change the color, style.color, to white. I'll make it yellow. Run it. Back here, and here, clear. And it's hard to see, but these are yellow. It's yellow. I mean, before you couldn't see because it was different colors, so I thought yellow would be easier. So, in fact, I could probably even get rid of this to make it look even nicer here. Right. So now it's not changing it to a hyphen. It's just going and changing this color to yellow and the background color to blue. Change anything. You could change it. You could put in you could change the border on a specific one. You could change, whatever options you have with CSS, you also have with JavaScript. So you apply it by using a style command, and any command you would use on your in CSS, background color itself, with all of these, you could use with this style option inside of JavaScript. Okay, yeah, which is nice. It's a nice feature. Okay, I have another example. I had another example, but we might not have time for it. Basically, the example, let me explain how I would have done it. The other example was to have nothing in here, have completely blank spaces inside of our table, and by pressing, let's say, go, a random X would appear inside of one of the elements. So it's something to think about. If you're curious on how you would have, it's a little bit more complicated. Obviously, you'd use the random. It's a little bit more complicated on how to do it, but that's an example that if you could try to think about it and see how you do it. If you're curious how to do it, I could send you the code on how to accomplish that. All right. In any case, let's go back to the notes here. All right. So up to here, we're up to something called spanning rows. So what is spanning rows? So ours is nice and neat now, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 3. We have 3, 6, 9. We have 9 cells here. Everything. But let's say I wanted that this cell, this first one, instead of having 3 cells, I want 2 cells, and the first cell I want to take up 2 spots, right? So the way we would do that is something called span rows. So spanning cells in a single cell that occupies more than 1 cell in a row or in a column, meaning you could make it you could span either across, or you could also span up and down. And the way that you would do it is you would accomplish it by adding what's called a row span or col span, depending on how you want it to span. It's an attribute to either the TD, if you want to do it in a regular thing, or the header, or the TH. Spanning starts in the cell with the row span or the col span attribute, and covers the cells in the right and below the cell that you're going and you want to span. So the syntax for it is row span rows, where rows is the number of rows that the cell is going to occupy. I'll do an example in a minute to make it a little bit clearer. And col span is where the cols is the number of columns that it's going to go and occupy. And here is an example that they're putting in. If you see over here, we have tr, they have their header, then they have this one col span 7, and here they have, I don't know, again, col span 7. Let me see if there's another example. Otherwise, I'll do one for you. I'll just do one. So let me show you really fast to do it. Hold on a second. Give me 1 minute here. I'm just going to copy my entire file that I have here in order to save on time, because I don't want to. Let me just copy this whole thing here. Give me a minute. Oh, first let me actually copy this to this all text in case somebody wants to do it. Hold on. I'm separating this file that I'll upload to Moodle with this. Like I said, it's not going to be the neatest code, but it's going to, at least it'll be there so you don't have to retype it. And this one here, I don't think I have this one yet. Okay, so let me now go and do the following. Hold on. Here is my HTML. Okay, so let's see what I did here. I have my body. I'm starting with a break. I don't even need the break if I want. I'm calling it my table. I'm not sure why I did that, but it's okay. I have my TR. I have col span 2. Class is clear. Again, this is for another example, but class, I don't even need my class for this example. We get rid of the class clear for right now. And get rid of this one here. Right, so I have AAB, and this col span is going to span for 2 columns. This does not span at all, and this one is going to span for 2. So if you take a look, and pretty much the top one, the top row is going to dictate all the rest of them. So you can see immediately from here that how many cells is my top row going to have? It's going to have 5 cells. The first one's going to take up 2 spaces. The next one's going to take up 1 space, and the next one's going to take up 2 spaces. Then my next one over here is going to be, I have a 1 space, and then a 3 spacer, and then a 1 spacer. And then over here, my next row is going to take up 5, and my last one's going to take up 5 individual ones. Let's see how this looks. Let me see how this looks. Hold on, where is it? Here. Right, so we take a look. So like I said before, we have the first one's going to take up 2 spaces, right? That corresponds over here to my 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. Then I have 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1. My next one I took up 5, the entire space of it, and my last one is 5 individual ones. Now, weird things start to happen if I take out, for example, one of those, right? And I try to run this, right? Well, that wasn't so weird, but you kind of got rid of that last one there. Let's see what happens when I get rid of, I don't know, let's get rid of this one here and delete this. So meaning it's expecting 5, but all of a sudden it only has 2. So what's going to happen? Well, not so bad, but my whole table is getting a little bit messed up. So you should try to be consistent, that once you know how many, it gets messed up even more when you change the top one here. Like if I get rid of, let's get rid of this one, see what happens. Again, not so bad, but you should try to be consistent with if you know your table is going to have 5 different columns, 5 different cells, then, work accordingly with each one. So that's the general concept behind these cells. So that's spanning. Your tables could have captions if you want, and it's marked using the caption element. Basically, it just makes a caption on your cell. The book has some examples. Let me just jump into the book really fast here. Hold on a second. I have the book here somewhere. Here's the book. Hold on, here's the book. This is 6, and I don't know where we are. We're up to, I don't know, wrong section, hold on. Adding tables, borders, row, column span right here. So I don't have an example with the captions, so I wanted to show you how a caption might look, right? You could also span, this is an example of spanning rows. You could also span a column if you wanted to as well by going using the col span in the column. If you wanted to go and do that, there's row span. And hold on a second. A lot of examples with that. Here, caption. So they're putting a caption here, caption all times central, and I thought they showed actually how it looks here, but I don't see it. So basically, it will show up, that it will say that you put the caption is where content is the content contained within the caption. It's listed immediately after the table tag. Only one caption is allowed per web table, inherits the table styles associated with that table. So whatever styles it has, it's going to take it along. It will have it along with it. By default, the captions are placed above the table. So normally, again, I don't have an example, but normally they're above the, doesn't have one. Normally they're above the table, but you could specify if you want it somewhere else. So you could just put in this code caption dot side, and you can put the side that you can put in the position is going to indicate where it's going to be. It's going to be either be in the top or in the bottom, and those are the options that you have to go in to put the caption. So that's how captions work. They have it. Oh, here. Is this the caption? Yeah. So you could have the caption wherever you want it. There are often times when you want to make a group of rows, creating row groups. Row groups contain specific table information, allows to create different styles for the group of rows. HTML supports 3 different row groups. You might want to have rows that belong to the table head, which is going to be using T-head for table head element. Rows that belong to the footer, to the bottom of it, so it's going to be T-foot for the footer of it, or for the body itself. So obviously that's going to be T-body, and those are you able to make those. You could make those. You could group them together using those commands. This is how you would do it. You would say the general structure of a web table is divided into row groups. You have table. Here's the start of the table, the end of the table, and here's the T-head. It's going to be table rows, or the footer, or the body itself. Only one T-head and T-footer element is allowed per table, obviously, because you only have one header and one footer. This is the code. It's also in the book if you want to get this code from it. Creating groups of column groups, the same way you could do with rows, you do with columns. Columns are determined implicitly based on the number of cells within the table row. That's how many columns there are, as I was mentioning before. If you make like 5 on top, then there can be 5 columns in the group. Columns are identified by the COL element. To identify individual columns, use the ID and or class attribute. So before, you notice I put in a class to specify a specific column, a specific cell or a column, so you could use the ID or a class. And again, with ID, you should really try to keep only one ID per page, but classes, you could use multiple classes if you wanted to. Creating column groups. Columns can be referred using the following column group element. So your table, you have the column group, and then the columns that you want to go and group together, or the rows, where columns are the individual columns and defined within that specific group. Again, there are more examples. I could keep going on with more and more examples. I have a few more examples that I could put down, but they're all in the book also. So I don't know. If there's time, I'll do them. All right. Creating columns and column groups are CSS style properties to modify them. If you want to, you can modify borders or the background or the width or even the visibility of a column. If you wanted to go into to change them, this is the code, the syntax to go in to accomplish that. And you have the there are different levels of precedence in the table styles. It goes in decreasing order. First, it's the table cells, which is in the rows, which is in the rows groups, and the same thing with the columns also. I'm not. Say that again. Where?
On the bottom of the HTML.
Yeah, over.
Links and references.
This over here. I don't see it.
What is it?
I'm not seeing that. Maybe because I'm just not seeing it. Hold on.
Underline that TD equals span equals 7.
Yeah.
Div class equals links.
Yeah. Let me just put it into here so I can take a better look. Hold on a second. Oh, this is it here? Yeah. I don't know. Complicated because you're dealing with different rows and widths and all the different styles within the columns. There are websites that you could go to. I'm gonna bring one up right now for you. And I mean, they're very easy to find. Give me a second here. Okay, here. Hold on. I will use this page here. And I just did a quick search for a website that gives me the ability to create my own table, and it will give you all the HTML code necessary to create that specific table. So here's an example. Okay, here you could pick a template. I don't know, I'll choose this one over here, right? And then you could say how many cells do you want. I want this many cells, right? You could then go and choose the color that you want. You could choose the font, the color, the background color, the dividers of the colors. You're able to go and choose the width of the cells, the padding within the cells. Everything you need is being done for you over here within, by just clicking. And your end result, this is your table that you've created. This is how it's going to look. This is the actual HTML, and this is the CSS associated with it. Right? But the truth is the code is, you could easily create it by going to one of these, one of these websites. So whether it be the width that you're trying to change here, in this case, right, the next few slides talk about the width, right? You're able to change all these other elements if you wanted to. You could change just the header or just the specific elements. That page or a page similar will give you the ability to make changes. I mean, to let you go and make those changes. This tables and responsive design. Well, we've already talked a little bit about responsive design, and I said at the beginning there is a bit of a controversy of why to use tables and why not. One of the reasons that we do use tables is it's easy to look at the information in rows and columns format, and it's kind of easy to create. One of the downsides is it's not so responsive. Like if you take a look here at these examples, right, when you try to look at a table inside of a phone, it's going to look like, sometimes you have to blow up your device. You have to enlarge in order to go and see the information. So the way around that is they've tried to make tables that are more responsive. As you see, a new layout of a table that for mobile screens is required. Often they choose one column where all the data, you're able to have a specific label. And I'm going to show you another website that helps out using this type of design. Here, I'll show you that right now. Let me just see what else there is to point out. This is the responsive design, right here. So let me show you another website. One way to get around this is to make a table using divs. As opposed to use the word column, table, you could go to, and I just, this website is, I could send you the name of this website, but I just looked online, online table creator, and there's a million of them. I just happened to choose this one before class. I usually design my tables using by Scratch, and this is this one here. I also found this table generator. I want to create a table. But I want to use it using divs. I think it gives me the ability for that. Where was it? HTML table. 1 second. HTML tables is an HTML table. Text table. HTML table. Anyway, this is a similar one, but it's more of a, it's a little, it's a different type of design. This gives you the ability to center the text if you want to center the text. Gives the ability to join specific. If I want to join, let's say, these elements together, we talked about spanning. So you could go and this is span. It automatically tells you how to span. If you want to span these, you could span those. And again, this is reflected inside of the actual HTML. You can see here that that as soon as I make a change, it's going to reflect inside of the HTML. You can make specific elements bold. You could center the text. So you could center the text in specific cells if you wanted to. All this is, all you have to do is just click and it'll do it for you. And copy this code to your document. I do want to find for you though that other one. Hold on a second. Where is it? Give me one moment. All right. Yeah, I thought I saw a way to do it. So yeah, so you could either do it you could either create this using a table format, right, or you could use in a div format. A div format, basically here you don't see the word table anymore, right? This is the actual HTML, right? You no longer see the word table. You see a bunch of basic divs, but the classes, and these classes correspond to over here to this CSS. And it's going to, and this is a great way. This is how I learn a lot of the information, is by doing something like this and seeing the corresponding CSS for any specific set of commands. And it gets quite, again, complicated going in. It's a little bit more complicated if you want to join tables together, like spanning them or having the same column, a few, to do when you want to span 3 columns. It's a little more complicated with CSS. In fact, I don't think that this even covers it because it is a little too complicated. But it is possible to change the width of that specific one to be more. And all the features are here and and available. And again, I said that this is not going to be, I know they kind of went through this fast. I just want to show you the ability that you're able to go and do this, and to give you a little taste of how to do it. And I'm still learning about different things about different ways to create tables, and you also know how to make already how to make columns. So sometimes you don't even need a table. Only use a table when it's necessary to go and to use a table. In any case, that's what the rest of these slides talk about. I posted the slides to Moodle if you want to go through it. The other chapters, let me just quickly go through I'm not going to go through the other chapters. I just want to talk about what the chapters talk about. All right, so let me go back to our book over here. Right, we have we have the chapter 5 talks about different mobile designing for the mobile web. There are different types of devices that people use, depending on the type of device that the person views their web page on, and you're able to actually change your CSS to read what device the user is using, and then go and write more code to accomplish, to get a good look on the device that they're going and using. So if it's on a computer, the screen it'll look good on the screen, and if it's on, let's say, a phone, the program goes and says, the CSS says, oh, they're using a phone. Instead of using the computer, the monitor CSS, I'm going to use a different CSS. So that's what this chapter deals with. Then that's chapter 5. We just did chapter 6, chapter 7. Web forms are we kind of touched upon web forms. The fact that you're creating a document already that has the ability to read text from the user for the math problem that I assigned, that's in essence a form. In addition to a form, you're also able to go and do checking on a form. Like if you ask the user to put in a number and they put in a letter, you can say, no, that's not right. You have to put in a number. So that's more or less what this chapter is talking about. You're able to add multimedia. You're able to add. This is not a difficult. You could read this chapter. You could put in a video clip. It's just a different command to put in a video clip. You could put in captions. You can put in audio clips. It's just a different command to put into your page in order to go into to get that. Then we did chapter 9 and chapter 10. We touched upon as far as the arrays.